Thank you, everyone, for coming to this event, and thank you to our panelists. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but I'll go first. Hello, everyone. I'm Xin. I'm a product manager at Statsig.
Hey, everybody. Ilya here, leading experimentation at DoorDash.
Hey, everyone. Sumeet. I'm the head of data at Brex.
Hi, everyone. Omar, engineering manager, underwriter app at Line.
Yeah, so it's awesome to see a lot of familiar faces, but also see a lot of folks here as well, like customers and people that we've met at other events, and a great list of companies and people on the panel today. My first question is, can you describe your role a little bit more, how experimentation fits into your day-to-day job at the company?
Yes, definitely. So I'm, again, Ilya, leading our central experimentation platform across engineering, science efforts, and we're partnering very closely with analytics and product development teams to ensure we make data-driven product decisions.
Yeah, so I lead the data teams. So it's data science, data engineering, and data analytics at Brex. And I guess my role in experimentation is like convince people to run more of them and to also kind of understand when we should be running them and really advocate for that within the company. So that's been kind of how I'm involved.
Prior to using Statsig, we used to run maybe a few dozen experiments. And then my team decided to integrate with Statsig back in 2022. And since then, it has been phenomenal. So more and more team are using it over time. And our team started using experimentation. There was some friction, but over time, all of the other teams started following through because they saw how great it is.
That's really awesome. So I'm hearing a theme of like data backgrounds. I also have a data background. I spent most of my career in big data and data engineering, but it's like data backgrounds and a culture of experimentation. So is experimentation really huge in your company? Or are you trying, like you mentioned, you're trying to foster a culture of data and experimentation. So is everyone in the company using Statsig for experimentation, or are they always running experiments or gates when they're launching new products? Or how does that fit into the org? Like, where is that culture of experimentation today?
Yes, so at DoorDash, we have our own experimentation platform that we built, and we're now scaling. We're super data-driven, so we're running tons of experiments across the company for specific different use cases. So, for example, for the main consumer DoorDash app that hope many of you are using, we're running experiments, for example, on our feed and search experiences, recommendations for restaurants, food, and now we've gone even beyond restaurants to grocery stores and electronic stores. You can buy a TV set on DoorDash from Best Buy if you'd like to. And and then, for example, we're experimenting with routing algorithms of orders to dashers, or navigation through the stores as dashers find specific items in grocery stores, electronic stores. So everything is experimentation based.
Yeah, I think we are definitely trying to run more and more experiments. We run them on the onboarding page, obviously, so you sign up for Brex. We can give you potentially a different order of questions to understand how you might be eligible for our product. We also try to really think deeply about where to experiment on high-frequency pages. So think of like the home page or the dashboard. We're constantly trying to tweak that and improve it for the right cohort of users with the right intentions. And then actually, recently, we've had a lot of kind of success, at least within the data team, of adding experimentation to non-product areas like sales, GTM, and ops to see how we can improve their workflows and queues with Statsig and some of these other kind of platforms. Actually, figure out, can we actually improve productivity through data science and models being inserted into a program, not just drop it in and do a pre-post, using that same experimentation mindset across other systems.
Yeah, we started by running experiments on our app UX. And then we were successful that other teams who work on the internal side started running experiments as well. That was successful too. There was more traction, more adoption. Our marketing teams are running experiments. Even our mechanics are changing how the tires that we have on bikes and then tracking how the GB, the gross bookings, and the trips are changing based on the mechanical changes that they're doing on the hardware side. So pretty much everywhere. Yeah.
Wow, that preempted my next question. I was going to ask like where you're running it, but it seems like it really is pervasive within the company. You're running it not just on the consumer-facing side, but within internal-facing applications and operations, and like always finding ways to iterate and improve. So I know like all your companies are well-known names, lots of users. Can you tell me a little bit more about the scale that you're running experiments on and the number of users? Like, is it millions of users, billions of users, hundreds of experiments, or thousands of experiments? Like, what's that scale today?
Yes, at DoorDash, we're scaling up to about 10,000 experiments per year currently, but then we're growing globally nowadays. We have about 42 million monthly active users on our main consumer app, and we're running in the range of about 300 million experiment or feature flag evaluations per second at peak time.
We run hundreds of experiments a year, and we run on millions of users across like the different stack, but we also run on vehicles, which is a different change as well.
Yeah, we're probably in more like the hundreds, not quite the hundreds of thousands. That we're kind of focused on businesses, right? And so we also want to make sure we have the same experience across the entire business at times. And so we're kind of a little less in terms of the number of possible treatments. But definitely, we're really focused on every 3 times a year, we're rolling out a new product experience with our release cycle. And so in that process, we're doing feature gates to make sure everyone has a kind of a very intentional rollout plan across different customer types. So that's been part of where almost every customer gets exposed to a version of an experiment, or at least a rollout every single year.
You touched upon this briefly, but Brex is a B2B company that like trust and reliability is key. And when you're running these experiments, how are your teams designing it? What are some of the guardrail metrics and like kill switches that you have? Like, can you tell me a little bit more about the experiments you're running and to ensure that you're maintaining the integrity of the platform?
That's a really good call. I mean, trust is paramount for us, right? We can't disrupt payroll for a business. We can't disrupt them sending a wire to pay their vendor that they've been working with and unlock the next phase of growth in their product. So we're really intentional. And I'd say at the high end, right, for enterprise customers like DoorDash, who we love, we don't even experiment with them, right? It's a lot of conversations, a lot of just showing them new experiments, showing them new experiences, and asking them, when do you want to turn on the feature flag? But really ensuring that they eventually do, because we do want our product to move forward, especially when we have conviction. When we run experiments, we're not trying to run them to all of our customers. We're trying to focus it on those that are actually eligible for that like potential change that we feel like could actually have a benefit from it. To also help kind of speed up time to power and not have too much noise in the data from folks that might not be interested or may never actually care about that particular service changing. So we're really intentional about doing all those things to build trust, but also still trying to progress the company forward in those 3 releases so that we don't lose the speed element of how experiments can really help accelerate product development.
That makes a lot of sense, and it's great that you have like these rollout criteria and targeting for who gets to see this. I'm sure this is like very relevant for consumer apps like DoorDash and Lime as well, right? You have millions of users, and they're all in different regions. They have different cohorts and profiles. How are you targeting your experiments to them, and like how do you make sure you're not overfitting on one set of users before you like make a decision?
Yes, we tend to run experiments more at a kind of global scale, and then what we call is dimension cuts for specific segments of customers. Would it be for like marketplaces, be Chicago, New York, or somewhere let's say Finland, something like that, and then after analyzing experiments, we figure out how it works more at the global scale, and then for specific segments. And this way we make sure that we don't overfit experiments to those specific segments. And then if the experiment is successful, if your success metric is statistically positive, and you didn't degrade your guardrail metrics, then you would make a decision to roll it out either for a specific marketplace if you want to, or more at a global scale across customers. But yeah, we do support what's called feature gates after running an experiment, so you can roll it out for a specific segment or specific types of customers, let's say newly registered users, or users who are our power users, things like that. So yeah, it's really specific. And then similarly, when we run Dasher experiments, we tend to run let's say switchbacks because we need to deal with network effects and making sure that DoorDash and customers have the same experiences with Dashers. So that those would be different use cases as well.
The answer is it depends. For some experiments, we can run them globally because we see this is going to be a change that's going to affect all users the same way. However, for some experiments, and mostly pricing experiments fall into that bucket, we need to make sure that we have enough sample size grouping markets that are similar in terms of the pricing structure that we have to be able to get good results. At the same time, we're not able to split by every single market, because if we do, then there's going to be a lot of noise in the data. So it depends from one experiment to the other.
That makes a lot of sense. When all your different teams are running experiments, how do you ensure like consistency of metrics and success criteria? Are you taking advantage of templates like your experiment must run for X number of days, it must have a certain statistical significance before you make a decision?
Yes, at DoorDash we do have a concept called sample size calculator that will estimate approximately how long the experiment should run to reach Statsig. But then one thing is your estimate, another thing the actual data. So we tend to run an experiment until it reaches Statsig, and then we use various variance reduction techniques, including Cupid, QPAC that we built, and I think Statsig adopted, and Winsorization we build for things like removing outliers. So all these different techniques to make sure that you increase power of your metrics and reach Statsig results.
Of course, DoorDash, with your thousands of experiments, you would talk about all these advanced experimentation techniques, Bayesian, Cupid, Cure, like you just ratted off all of them, and they're making me look bad. I'm not even aware of all these techniques. What about Brex and Lime?
Yeah, there are two ways that we try to maintain that consistency. One is through tooling, so making sure that we have the defaults of how long experiments should run, the p-values, using Cupid, sequential testing, and so on. But the main thing is making sure that we have an experimentation culture, which we try to adopt and embrace by having these experiments weekly reviews. As part of any project, if it's big enough, or even if it's small, we want to have an experiment design doc that we review, also an experiment readout. In the experiment readout, we require a trio of data science, an EM, a PM to approve the recommendation. If they're not in agreement, then we have a live review with a broader audience to make sure that we're getting into better decisions. And over time, that's leading the organization to adopt better standards, know how to run experiments better. Oftentimes in the experiment design, we realize that the success metric is not even a metric that we track today. And were we to just run the experiment, we'd come back after a month and realize we won't be able to make any conclusion and we need to redo the experiment. So having the tooling in place, but also fostering an experimentation culture is equally or even more so important.
Yeah, I agree with what they both said, especially what Omar was saying, that like the pre-work is so important. Like you really have to understand the criteria going in. You don't add too much friction, so like you maybe don't run any experiments. There's so much work, but you want to be able to ensure there's a set of metrics that have been pre-approved that you can run experiments on, and those are loaded into platforms like Statsig. And a little bit of friction does help like build the culture. I don't want it to be completely free for everyone to run whatever they want. But you also just want to make sure that like before you spend a lot of time, resources on this, that is established. Like amount of pre-work is set up for setting this thing up for success.
Got it. And when you set those things up for success, are you the experimentation champions of the company, or do you have like a set of experimentation champions for each team that's running experiments?
Yeah, I'd say like we're like the stewards, right? Like if the company runs 0 experiments, probably on my team, like something went wrong, right? We don't want to get involved into every single one because that can actually create that extra friction. But if we're able to set up that platform with the set of metrics that are predefined and kind of like approved to run experiments against, then we've done our job, and hopefully folks start to use that. And obviously we're constantly kind of getting called in to make sure the results are significant and all the things that come from actual analysis. But I want my team spending time on thinking of what to do, right? And running causal inference, and et cetera, to actually like find opportunities for experiments that maybe be slipping through the cracks because folks don't have the right background to find that.
All right. I'm going to put all of you on the spot here, just like how Liz did for the audience. What is your favorite type of experiment to run?
Raise your hand if you are an, let's say, Amazon Prime member. Yeah, quite a few of you. At DoorDash, we have a similar loyalty program. We call it Dash Pass. That's really awesome and offers a lot of rewards, such as, for example, free deliveries, discounts on fees, different various promotions. You only get access to streaming services such as HBO Max and discounts on Lyft rides. But at one point, we were experiencing high churn on DashPass subscriptions. So thousands of members were canceling their subscriptions, and we had a hypothesis that it was not necessarily because customers were dissatisfied with DashPass, but they were not aware of all the benefits that DashPass provided. So we set up and ran an A/B test where in the treatment group at the point of cancellation, we would really provide it's called customized messaging to understand, okay, if you're canceling for this reason, actually reconsider your decision because these are the various things that we're providing. We'll offer maybe 50% off your next month's subscription, and the control group would still have the same default cancellation experience where people would just go and cancel. And it was a widely successful experiment. We were able to roll it out across the board, and we're able to prevent thousands of DashPass members from canceling. But even more than that, we realized that retention is a high product surface area that we need to focus on and constantly remind DashPass members of the various benefits they get. For example, like checkout flow showing that they're getting free deliveries and things like that. So it was very successful and became a whole product area that we now support and drive.
Yeah, my favorite type of experiments are experiments that have a simple idea and then end up being very successful or very impactful. And we ran one of these experiments where we saw that if a new rider, they haven't taken a trip online before, they try to scan a vehicle, and you probably experienced this in San Francisco. If you use Lime, if you haven't, I encourage you to do so. And if that vehicle does not allow them to start a trip because it's low on battery or needs to be fixed or something, then people would walk away. And we experiment by giving riders a 40% discount if it's the first time trying Lime. And we saw a 5% increase in trips and a 3.5% increase in revenue just from that experiment. Obviously, the net revenue initially was lower because we're giving them a discount, but it was a short-term decline for a longer-term benefit. So experiments that are very simple in idea but end up being impactful, like these are my favorite.
Yeah, I guess one we're running right now, which kind of mentioned about this internal kind of prioritization queue we have for the sales team. It's been really informative. We're building models to predict what potential revenue a business might bring if they sign up to Brex. Some level of uncertainty in our models. But our sales team, they'll cut right through that. They'll be able to give us an understanding once they make the contact with the potential customer and start to progress through a deal, whether or not that prediction was correct. So that uncertainty in running an experiment with it to be able to insert those into their queue has actually informed us a lot about how to improve our models, how to also work better with the sales team. And for that, it's been really fun to kind of iterate alongside them because we're able to actually learn at a faster clip in terms of how to improve that productivity. And then what that also gives us is a sense of how much further we can go by either scaling the team, what are the blockers to actually hitting our particular goals in a space. So we're getting tons of feedback just by creating an experimentation approach to that part of the business. Previously wasn't there that, if you talk about EBD and all these things that you guys are running, that's always in the forefront of how to iterate through products. But you can apply that elsewhere and get a lot of fast learning, which I've really enjoyed.
No, I was really hoping you would talk about like a hypothetical experiment. I don't know if this is something that Brex and DoorDash is running, but I recently got Dash Pass through my Brex card. Is that a joint experiment that you guys like synced up on to run?
That was so obvious. We didn't need to run an experiment. It's like, who doesn't love Dash Pass? I mean, I use it now every single time because I have it. Thank you for that. Definitely not going to cancel. So no, that wasn't anything we needed to run an experiment on. I would actually love to find a way to get more people to sign up and enable Dash Pass through our Brex card. And I guess at some point we should measure, is it actually retentive for Brex? Not just for Dash Pass, but we're gonna just ride with it, and hopefully everyone uses their Brex card if you have one.
All right.
Order Dash Pass.
Now that all three of you are connected on the stage, you're gonna run a joint experiment between Brex, Lime, DoorDash, and come back next year maybe with some learnings on that experiment.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we actually use Brex for our own internal expenses. Mm-hmm. We love it, and our future request is to enable it at a global scale, because DoorDash is now available not just in North America, but in Europe and many other countries, as we've been acquiring various companies around the world. And yeah, Brex should definitely enable it at the.
We're trying to keep up with DoorDash here. Yeah, all these international players is great. No, obviously we're really a big fan of DoorDash and all the things we're doing, and plan to partner for a long time. It's great, and Lime soon too.
Yeah, we don't have a Dash Pass, but we have a Lime Prime. And we actually ran an experiment a couple of weeks ago. It's not an experiment on Statsig because it was a full market launch, and then we're doing pre-post analysis, and we just tweaked the pricing structure from charging by the minute to having what we call like a 20-minute ride for $2.45, and we saw a 3x increase in subscriptions on a daily basis just by tweaking the pricing structure.
Wow, that's amazing. So we have a few minutes left, but I know in the audience we have some experimentation experts, and then we have some people that are somewhat newer to experimentation as well. Given your expertise in this space, what would be a learning and like closing remark that you would give to the audience if they're just starting out in experimentation, or best practices, even if they are an experienced experimentator?
Yes, well, if you're just starting with experimentation, just do it one thing at a time. You don't need to do everything. Start small, start with basic experiments. Just learn it. My advice is just do it, right? Kind of learn by doing, and the more experience you get, the more advanced you can run your experiments for. But it doesn't have to be advanced. As long as it does the job, that's all that matters. If you're more an expert, we're hiring. So if you, we're looking for great folks with experimentation experience and product engineering. Yeah, please reach out.
Yeah, I guess if you're already running experiments, you might be, because you're here at this event. I think that the thing I'm trying to champion with my team is like the no's are worth 10 times the yes. Like if you get something to be Statsig, awesome. Obvious, probably you should ship it, great. But to have something that is Statsig and still not ship it because you don't think it's good enough, or something that you feel like, is actually a worse experience, it takes a lot more organizationally to come around to not shipping a change that everyone seems excited about and wants to do. So to us, we're trying to run as many experiments as possible. We're also trying to get a bunch of no's in there. Because if we're just getting a bunch of yeses, you're kind of doing things that are maybe more obvious, which is great, and you're having increased. But then why are you running experiments to do it? So kind of valuing both sides of just the quantity, doing it, but also the ability to come to the conclusion of not doing something because of the information coming out of this experiment is really critical, I think, to becoming a great at this part of your role.
Yeah, I'll leave with two. One, being very, very crisp about your hypothesis for the experiment, what you're trying to test, and how you're going to measure it, and building that experimentation culture, because it's a journey, and so long as you're improving, that's the main thing. And as part of that, a very important thing is being intellectually honest. So when the numbers are not working out, going back to the drawing board, even if you ran the experiment 10 times, you keep doing that again and again and see what you can change, versus just calling it a day and shipping things for the sake of shipping things.
Those are great takeaways, and unfortunately we're out of time, but I just want to thank all of you for coming on stage with me today and sharing your insights and sharing a look into how your companies are doing experimentation and thinking about experimentation. And thank you to the rest of the audience for coming to the event. And we'll be around here. You can talk to DoorDash, you can talk to Brex, talk to Lime, and talk to them about experimentation, but maybe also talk to them about Dash Pass, the Brex card, the Lime Pass, ask for some discounts or something like that. Get included in a certain experiment that gives you 99% off or something.
I want that one from DoorDash. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.